You want me to read this on the screen?
Well, yeah, you could read a little more, and then you could even look at the reply that your dad got.
Yeah, I'm looking at this second page.
So then what did he say on the second page?
Well, that was the last one I read.
Can you read it out loud?
Mm-hmm. You ready?
Yeah.
It's General H.S. Johnson, National Recovery Administration, Washington, D.C. Dear Sir, the Packard Mill Manufacturing Company is violating the code by speeding up the spinning department and been speeded up 2 times and are working the people to death. They have speeded up 2 times in the last month by putting larger pulleys on the drive shafts that were pulled for the motors. The water wheel has been speeded up 1 time or more, which includes most of the mill. Number 3, the hand and mill number 3 says that it has been speeded up several times too, which do not doubt, but, and then the rest of it's missing.
And then what's on the next page?
This is the first one. Is
Then
it 3?
No, then he signs it. He signs off. This is the second page.
Uh-huh.
That's the part that you said was missing. It's right here.
Oh, that was the first one I read. You want me to read it again?
No. Excuse me. It's a copy. Oh. Oh, and then he signed his name. Can you read the name that he signed and the person, the other person?
Yes, yours truly, R.S. Kirby and Mrs. M.S. James.
Do you think your daddy had ever written a letter before like that? Could you say that?
I don't think he has. I don't think he's written a letter like that before, as far as I know.
Was this something that you were all, where do you think he got the idea to do that?
Well, didn't any of us know he did it. Didn't anybody in the family know that he did it, unless it was Mother.
And what kind of response did he get?
We don't have the response.
I think it's on the top.
On top of the next page?
Yeah. Let's see. It's connected here on the bottom. There's his response.
Mm-hmm. Yours very truly. Information section completed. Divisitive. Geo.
And
I can't name it.
he wrote to him up here, Dear Mr. Kirby, thank you for your letter of February 5th.
Oh.
See up at the top?
Oh, I see what you mean. Thank you for your letter of February the 5th, directed to General Hugh S. Johnson. President Roosevelt has recently created the National Emergency Council for the purpose of consideration and investigation conditions such as you have described. The State Director of the Council for South Carolina is Mr. Lawrence M. Pinckney, Chamber of Commerce Building, South Carolina, to whom your letter has been referred and to whom you should direct any further information concerning this company. If your letter contains more specific information, state directly. Pinnacle would be better able to give the matter more intelligent consideration. Please send this to Washington, a mere complete statement of the violations on wages and our privileges. I thought I had read that, but I read the same one twice.
No, so they gave it. So they referred his letter to South Carolina. And did the state do anything to try to deal with these conditions?
I don't know. I don't remember.
What do you think?
I don't have the slightest idea because I don't remember that. Those letters might have been wrote after I had left here.
I think this letter was written before the strike in 1934. I'll show you one more. This is a piece of stationery that has all the officers on it and your name.
Cole S. Petty. And
See up top there where the letterhead is?
no, I don't see my name.
Right up here.
Oh, yes. I see now. P.O. Hughes, President, and Lloyd Kirby, Vice President. Now that Hughes was the son of the Hughes that kept the records.
So now, why don't you read the letterhead? You see your local numbers on there. See up at the top?
Oh. J.E. Hughes, Financial Secretary. Carl Millwood, Recording Secretary. Wallace Sinclair, Treasurer.
Can you read where it says Textile Union?
Oh yes, Textile Union number 1994. I didn't know that.
Could you read it one more time and mention Pacolet Mills, Pacolet, South Carolina?
I don't believe this.
Oh, it says right under
It's
the
right
seal.
there. You see right there. Right under the seal. Right there.
And right dab in the middle.
Oh yes, that's in print. That's Packlet Mill, South Carolina. And American Federation of Labor.
What do you think about that? That's how we found you.
Sure enough. Well, I am amazed that you found me at all. How'd you find my telephone number? I asked for information.
Actually, the librarian's father-in-law, Mr. Banks, knew who you were and gave me your number. But you know, I think one of the reasons why it was so hard for us to find you is because a lot of people are afraid to talk about what happened so many years ago, and they don't talk about the movement to organize unions in 1933 and 34.
Yeah, I understand that.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think that most of the people who belonged to the union then are retired by now.
What do you think about the fact that so many young people don't know about this history?
Oh, well, I guess their parents didn't talk about it.
Why do you think so many of the old timers are still afraid?
Well, I doubt if the old timers are bothered by it now.
Then why won't they talk?
Well, they probably would if we talked to them. But if we don't talk to them, they probably won't say anything.
So, when the strike, could you tell us about the settlement of the strike at the end, when Roosevelt made a settlement with the textile manufacturers?
Well, I don't remember too much about that. I just remember that there was a settlement.
And did everyone go back to get their jobs?
I don't know. I think there was a few already had a job somewhere else and didn't bother.
You told me before that everyone in your family got their jobs back but you.
Mm.
Could you tell us about that? You came, after the strike, you came back home. I know you stayed here and you lived here for quite some time before you left the area.
Well, I was the only one that's fired outright. My father's job one time ran out. Otherwise, they'd put in some different type machineries, and he lost his job. But he wasn't exactly fired; just run out. And my oldest sister, she worked on as long as she wanted to.
You told me that they made it a little hard for your family because of your position. Is that right?
Yes, they did. Had them all worried.
Could you talk about that?
Well, there was something else came up that did give us trouble. The main sewer line for the village runs down under our garden. And there was a pipe bursted, and the company didn't send anybody to fix it. And my father reported it again, they didn't fix it. So he went to Spartanburg to the health department and reported it. So they said they gave him orders later for the family to move out, hunt us a new place. And we didn't do it. So my father went back up there again and told them that what they had done, and they sent a man down to the office. I don't know what he said, but they withdrew that order.
So after the strike, you came back home, and I know you didn't have a job, did you? Right at the mill.
You mean after I come back from?
No, right after that strike, after the big strike in '34.
I was thinking I did have a job for a while after the strike. Yeah, I'm almost sure I did.
I guess the first time you told me about it, you said that they gave everyone a job back. Can we stop this? That they gave everybody in the community once, the strike was over and everyone, and they made a decision to be proactive.
Well, I think everybody was happy, and everybody was glad to go back to work because their money done run out, having difficulty buying something to eat. I'll tell you, we were limited to Irish potatoes and bologna and a few other little things. Every day we'd have those things. And we had chickens, and of course we had eggs. And sometimes we'd eat a frying size chicken.
But, excuse me. Here, can you close that?
Speed?
What do you think was lost when what do you think the South lost by not accepting unionism at that time?
Well, we let the North get ahead of us. And in fact, they were already ahead of us before the strike. And we were slow in getting a good balance.
What kind of opposition did you meet in the mill company and the community or the local government?
Well, the local government didn't do much in that regard. I think they stayed out because they tried to be impartial. Now, there's a few people inside the government or offices in the government that did take part one way or the other, but most of them didn't.
Do you recall how Mr. Montgomery responded to all of you wanting to be in the union? Could you call him by name?
Well, now, he himself did
Can
not.
you say Mr. Montgomery?
Big boy?
Mr. Montgomery was the president of
That's
the mill.
right.
Could you say that and then go on from there?
Yeah, Mr. Montgomery, he left the work up to his officials under him. And he didn't take part in running the mill. He just told them what to do. So therefore, he stayed clear of all the bad rumors. And finally, he sold his stock out to another man. What's the name of the man? Yeah, Roger Milligan. So Milligan became the president.
Now, you told me at one point you heard rumor of a flying squadron coming through this area during the strike. Do you remember?
Of what?
The flying squadron?
Oh, yes, yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Yes, there was a rumor coming from Gaffney saying there was a flying squad stopping at the
Could you start that again? I got in the way.
Mm-hmm. There was a rumor or a message coming from Gaffney saying that there was a flying squad sent out by mill officials, and they were spreading terror among the strikers, and they were coming to Packlet next. See, there's a road directly from Gaffney to Packlet, and us strikers, we didn't like that a little bit. So I got my shotgun, the rest of them got their guns, and if them people cross that bridge, they were going to be in trouble.
But these were other union people, weren't they?
No, these were anti-union people.
No, the people that were coming over here, they were for the union or against the union?
They were against the union.
Then I don't really, because what I understood was that the flying squadron were groups of unionized workers who would go from mill to mill.
Well, now there was some of those, but the ones I'm talking about were not those.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe we shouldn't call them flying squadron. Maybe we should. If they were anti-union people, could you explain that?
Well, they were hired.
Could
Apparently,
you say there was a rumor? Start it again.
well, they didn't say a rumor. I just said that. They said a message came from Gaffney stating that there was a bunch of men that was breaking up strikes, and they had weapons, and they were killing people, and they were coming to Packlet next. But we found out later that that wasn't true. So, but we didn't know that at first, so we got prepared to meet them if they did come. And that included me. I got my shotgun.
And what'd y'all do?
We waited. We got it. That's close to.
That again? I'm sorry.
We waited and waited and waited, and they never did come. That was a false statement.
When you were organizing and the union started to build and build, what did you feel like you all could accomplish?
We felt like we could.
Could you say that as we were organizing and the union built, and then tell me?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, we figured that we could organize like some of the unions in the North and become strong enough to sustain our positions, and we could get a reasonable agreement with the companies on on everything. That includes wages and work and timing and everything. That's what we was hoping for.
Was it also something? What about being able to be citizens? What about you know? I mean, from what did you feel? I mean, spiritually, did it feel like you were in a different place as working people?
No, no, I don't think so. Because about everybody here, or most everybody, had somewhat similar feelings. So I don't think I felt like I was different.
Did you feel like was it? Did you have a feeling of hope that you hadn't had before?
Yes, we did.
Could you talk about that?
Well, we were hoping that all that disagreement between us and the company would be smoothed out, and that we would become friends again.
In your recollection, was this the first time that you and other of the mill workers who lived here had participated like this?
Yes, we never had even thought about a union until Roosevelt advocated it. It didn't even occur to us.
And was this the first time that you'd ever tried to, I don't know, tell the company how you wanted things to be, or that you could combat favoritism or things that happened in the mill that you didn't like?
As far as I know, there hadn't been any complaints of that type. If there were any, I didn't know it.
Lloyd, do you think the South would be a different place today if the unions had stuck?
I didn't get it.
Do you think the South would be a different place today if the union movement had been powerful and stayed?
Well, it would have been for quite a while, but I think it would have finally went out because the mills were closed anyway. And
You
when,
could do that again and direct your answer
Yeah.
to.
okay.
Yeah, could you tell me how you think if you had been able to be successful at that time, how things would be now?
Well, they would have been fine for quite a while until a lot of foreign shipments came in and took the sales away from our companies.
Did you ever stop wanting the things that you were fighting for back in 1934, even though?
Well, when I was in the service, I forgot all about those things. You see, I had to study and study hard. Now, everybody in that school, at least everybody in the class that I was in, were either college graduates or had 2 years of college or had at least had high school diplomas. That was a requirement. And I don't know how I got through. I've been told, I guess, by 50 people that nobody without a high school diploma could get in the Air Force.
Well, you did great, didn't you?
I got through. I don't know. They might have mistook me for somebody else.
Now, I know that there was a black community here in Pacolet who worked in the mill, right?
There were some, yes.
Well, what did the black mill workers do during the time that you were organizing? Were they part of what you were doing?
No, they worked in what they call the opening room. That's where they open up the bales. And
Could you start that again and talk about, say, the black workers?
okay. Yeah, the black workers at that time, some of them worked in the opening room, opening up the bales and feeding them to a chute going into the picker room. And they had some of the black workers fired the boilers that made the steam and heated the mill and ran some of the machinery. And some of them worked outside in the village at many different tasks, including picking up trash and hauling it away, and included setting out trees and building walls along the road. Now you notice here, you've got a wall on both sides. And building sidewalks. Most black people worked jobs like that. There didn't many of them work in the mill to run machinery.
And when you were organizing, did you include the black workers?
I don't think any came to the meeting, far as I know.
Because do you think that your local union would have accepted or wanted to have them in the union?
I don't know. I just don't know. I would have voted to have them if it had come, but I couldn't say about the majority because they've got to live as well as we do. And when I was hauling oil, I didn't make any difference. As long as they paid their bill, they got service.
Now, the reason I asked is because we've seen written down that there were black workers here in Pacolet that had their own local union. Do you remember anything
No.
like that?
I sure don't. Don't remember a thing.
One last question. What was the best part of the organizing?
Well, I think friendship, because a lot of people who were acquainted, knew each other's name, were not close friends. But when we meet at the lodge, then everybody become friends. And that was one of the plus points of the union.
Thank you.
And
So what? Tell me, what do you remember about? I know you were living in this house at the time of the organizing, weren't you?
yeah. And then later on, after they organized to kind of put down the labor union, some of the,
Can you tell us about them building the union hall? Do you remember?
yeah, each one would carry their own tools.
Okay, we're gonna walk over to the other side of the house.
And they worked over there in their spare time. And I think they got legal papers on the ground, and then they built the hall in their spare time. And then they had their meetings on Saturdays. And at times they would have rallies, and different men who belonged to other unions would, in other places, would come and give a pep talk.
Lloyd, do you remember that?
Beginning to remember some of it slightly, but not enough to
Give any details?
comment on it.
And they just seemed like they enjoyed themselves together. Back then, the communities were more, I think, depended on each other for friendship. And
Was there any? I mean, how did people feel about? How did you feel about the fact that Lloyd was so, involved
Active.
and Daddy
Well,
was involved?
he was big brother, and I felt like he should do what he thought he needed to.
I didn't ask her for anything.
And
She was the kid sister. I told her instead of her telling me.
yeah, he was one that was older than me.
Now, your whole family who worked belonged to the union.
The ones that worked at that time, yes.
Now, how did the community respond?
Well, I think this was a sort of a broad-minded community. They didn't put each other down until toward the last. Toward the last, the company kindly, well, a few that worked for the company, top men, would organize a club of their own. They called it the Red Apple Club, didn't they?
I don't know anything about that. I must have been gone.
No, you weren't. You were here, and they met down there at underneath the city hall. Remember?
I don't remember that.
Do you
It
remember?
was the,
Could you
the purpose of that meeting, that union was to try to bust up the labor union. I remember it. And there was a little bickering back then, but after a while it all died down. And I think most of the people who,
this way?
most,
Most interested in is that after the strike, you were all able to stay here, and you're still living in. Same house.
Yeah, we bought it from the company.
Do you
Well-
remember that part?
Yes, after the strike was over, most everyone who wanted to went back to work. And as far as I know, there wasn't any friction. For maybe a little later on, some build up between the high company workers and the laborers. But far as I know, they didn't ask anyone to move at that time, not because of the labor problem. But eventually, you told them about Dad getting in on the spot about the sewage part.
Yeah.
didn't you? Well, I don't think that had anything to do with the labor union. That was a different incident.
Did you
But-
ever tell your kids about Lloyd being vice president of the local union here, or your daddy?
I don't think I've talked to them about that. As a matter of fact, I didn't know about the letters that were written. I'm surprised because my father didn't get too great an education. He and mother either, but they knew how to read and write. And they understood how things were going on. And I don't know.
Was there ever any bad feelings in the community afterwards? I mean, I know you didn't get your job back. Was that hard for you when you were working in the mill? I mean, what was
Well,
going on?
I wasn't working at that time. I didn't go to work until 39. And that was all cleared then.
Do you feel
That's-
that your brothers and sisters who were working in the mill at the time, do you think they got it a little bit harder because of Lloyd being the vice president for the union?
Well, there were remarks at times that really didn't need to be made. And maybe they didn't get quite as good a breaks because back then things were run on buddy-buddy system more or less. Come on, help me, bud.
I done talked out.
This is something I really don't know too much about. Well, that was back before they started this insurance business. I can remember that. I would go in the mill, though I didn't work there. I would go in the mill and piddle around and help some until the companies were required to insure their workers. And once they done that, since I didn't have a job in the mill, I had to stay out. I wasn't covered. And so I went back to school.
I think it's really gonna rain.
I had to go to the plane up there in that cloud.
I don't see any dark clouds up here there.
You see him up?
About the rallies?
Well, I'm just
I'm-
wondering about if you remember Lloyd on the picket line. Did you ever go to see him? Do you remember
During the strike.
when they first finished building the Union Hall, going down there?
I don't remember too much about that, but I know that they had the rallies, and that's about the only thing I went to, because I wasn't a laborer, and I didn't belong to it.
How did your mama feel about you being involved?
Well, I suppose she felt all right. She never did complain. And of course, she never did brag about it either. So I just don't know.
Well, it really wasn't time to brag, because that was something that eventually sort of separated the community, you know, a little bit. No one wanted to hurt the other person's feelings. So,
How do you feel about the fact that something that it was such a major moment, you know, it was a huge strike. It took place all over the country at the same time, north and south. How do you feel about something that you were part of something so big?
Well, I felt good about so many people throughout the South were pulling together. I thought that we were going to accomplish a lot. And I believe that because the President of the United States was supporting us.
what year did the NRA come in?
I don't know.
You remember the NRA?
Yeah, I remember. I remember it happening, but I don't remember what year it came in.
1933.
32,
33.
33.
July of 1933.
That's when wages jumped from around $5 or $6 a week to $12 a week. Put in how many hours?
40?
40 hours?
Mhm.
I thought you'd done more than that.
I thought you were talking about the time when it...
No, before the
Oh,
NRA.
I didn't know
Well,
that.
back then, if a person had a day off from work, come noontime, they went back in and they done what they call quartering.
That's
they
in the
were-
weave room.
I thought it was the whole meal.
I don't think so.
Well, they worked 2 hours and let the regular hand go out and eat and come back. Then the one who was due to be off that day gets to go back home. And if the water got too high in the river and they had to close down, it was run by water wheels, and they had to close it down and you lost some time, well, you had to make it up. Sometimes
Well,
at the end, of,
if it got too low.
too low. I thought it
Yeah,
was too
yeah.
well,
Getting too
high.
high didn't stop it.
Didn't it?
Extra water goes down.
Well, I remember the river got up a number of times and it
Well,
closed.
I remember that too.
Well, okay, if the
Now-
water got too low, they
Oh,
closed.
I remember one time it was high, and they stopped because it's afraid it's going to run into the mill, get over the bounds. Now that's the one time it did that, but generally speaking, they didn't stop because of high water.
But now when the NRA went into effect, they cut out that quartering business, didn't they?
Yeah, they had 3 shifts, 8 hours per shift, so you couldn't put any quartering in it. Everybody had to work straight, 8 hours.
Let's see what else did you do.
So you all got to stay in the house. I mean, Lloyd came home after the strike and he moved, and he stayed with you for some time. Oh, I saw lightning.
You
Yeah, I stayed here until I got a job at Union. I hauled vegetables and things like that. Well, at first I ran a filling station for a while, and the owner of it died. And the new owners had other plans. So I had to go out of business.
Well, you worked at several cotton mills
Yeah.
through that time. You went from
My first job was at Union, down there between Union and Buffalo. Second job went to Chesney. And then when they stretched out up there, I went over to Lawrence. And I was still working there when I was drafted. Uncle Sam called me, and I almost hurt him.
he sent you greetings.
Did your brother's union activity and your dad's union activity change your ideas in the future? Did it?
Well, I think it helped the South. I can see how things have changed since then, but in this section of the country, most of the companies have I think they understood the basis of it, and they changed their way of handling things. So the company, after Montgomery sold, seemed like Milligan, he tried to keep his wages up with the others in competition and went along with the improvements. And so he was a rather good guy to work for, in my opinion. Though they didn't have a union. At that, after that, all the unions worked out.
Now the union here is stuck. I mean, you didn't all just give up afterwards.
No, not completely. But we did give up the union.
Since the companies would keep up with the average of the others, they didn't. I think that's one reason through here is not as organized as some other places.
I just
Like,
remembered something I hadn't remembered in years. Jonathan Lancaster, at that time, he was assistant superintendent, wasn't he?
That was during the war.
Well, he was something before the war.
I think he was just an overhauler or something.
No, well, anyway, I remember now, he came to Reba and asked her, did I want to go back in the mill?
Well, the war had started and they needed anyone they could get.
That was after the war.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, after the war, yeah, he was assistant. So.
What do you think the effect was of having all the activists, the leaders in your local union, get fired or have to leave?
Well,
Could you repeat my question and think about it? Talk on that?
I'll let her do that.
No, we want you to do it.
You're the one that.
Well, most of them that was fired and left here and didn't ever come back. Some of them went to the farm. Some of them went to other villages. But everybody who were fired and didn't get the job right back left town.
And those people who were the activists, the people who were the leaders, the officers, the people who had really organized, what was the effect of the community losing those people?
It was.
Could you repeat? Could you try to take my question and incorporate it in your answer?
I think so. I think they were missed.
Could you say the leaders were missed?
Well, yes, the leaders were missed, and it made those others feel frightened that they too would go. That's why I think it finally bursted up.
That along with the company
Well,
making amends of
well,
their
it might-
ways.
There could have been more than one factor.
How did you feel when you left town, when you left home?
Well, I was happy to have a job.
Did you talk union?
No, I started out working on the third shift, and nobody hung around. See, we wouldn't talk union in the mill, and nobody hung around, and didn't have a chance to talk union because everybody went his way right quick when he got out the door.
In your own heart, did you? In your own mind, did you bring anything from having done all that organizing? Did you bring anything with you from this experience when you left Pacolet?
I don't think so, because I had in mind for a while not going back to textile. I thought about doing something else. But when I got a chance to get a job at Union, then I took it. A neighbor of ours who lived over on the other street was working down there, and so he told me that there was a job open down there if I wanted it. You remember Linda Lamb?
Yeah.
He was working down there at that time.
And y'all rode together.
Yeah, he was wanting to way back and forth. See, so he rode with me when I went to work.
And when Did people talk about this over the years?
No, it's the quietest thing I've ever known. It's just past history. I think it's more or less this part of the country, this section of the country. Because the person gets along now about as well as the next person if they just work and turn their job. They'll get the same wages, same benefits, and no trouble or problems in the meals.
What do you mean the quietest thing?
It's just not talked about. I don't know. They may think that it will give their children a hard time or something.
Well,
of
I
that
tell you,
nature. I don't know what it.
That cat got the tongue.
Uh,
That's a southern saying.
well, I figured it's probably they thought maybe their children would have a mark on them before they went to work or something of that nature. But they had what they called the blacklist, and that was people that when they would check on references about working, that the other companies wouldn't hire. And I don't know anyone personally that was on the blacklist, but I just heard others talk of it. Do you?
No, I never did try to get back. I don't know whether it would let me go back or not.
Well, that got old and wore out, and then they hired the hands back. War come, they put on buses. They haul people in to work.
Especially those that lived in the country.
Mm-hmm. But they weren't organized. I think this patriotism was the head point at that time.
Was your family marked?
Well, I don't know unless it was my dad and him. Outside of that, I don't really know that they were, but see, they don't give out that kind of information.
Would you say that the community felt that? And could you use that term again,
Well, I'll
marked?
tell you about myself. When I was old enough to go on to a job, well, there wasn't many vacancies. Well, almost none at all. They had spare hands, and they'd send regular hands out, let spare hands work. Well, I asked for a job a number of times, and I didn't get it, so I went somewhere else and went to work. But I don't know that that was direct from the connection of the union or not. So I couldn't say.
How do you feel
But,
about what your brother?
I think part of it was because he belonged to the union. And one or two in particular kind of picked on that point, because I would hear things. You know, among kids, they say things. But
And it's always the truth.
always. No, that in a few years, all that leveled out, and friends were friends again. And that's the reason I think they're not organized down in this part of the country the way that the North is. Now they're building a automobile plant over toward Greer, and they're trying to get it unionized. Now those kind of jobs are more unionized than textile around here. And I don't know if they're going to get a union over there or not, because these people they're trying to hire a lot of local help, and that's probably one of the reasons. I mean, they hadn't said so. I'm just reading behind what they're doing. But people around here are good workers. As a matter of fact, I think they're tops.
of what you did? Are you proud that you were vice president of your local?
Well, I think so.
He's not ashamed of it. We talk among ourselves at times, but not really with others.
Could you repeat what I said about, could you incorporate my question in your answer about how you feel about yourself for what you did back then?
Well, I believe I was doing my part in trying to get the South organized, and we get on a level with the North. That's what we was hoping for.
Do you look back with pride and use
Well,
that word if it's true?
Some may have a little pride in what I done, but I had a lot of sorrow too.
But it wasn't from the fact of what you done, it's the fact from results that made you feel
Well,
that
yeah,
way.
no, that's true.
So I don't think you resent what you've done.
No, it's not that.
I feel like the whole thing has really helped the South in the long run because it did up the level of living. And they did pass the NRA.
Yeah, we were about to get rich and we got $12 a week.
Well, that was a step in the right direction, and it's much better than what things were.
Yeah, that's true. How'd you like to
So-
make $12 a week?
I can remember
Well-
Dad coming home and with a ticket with $5 and something.
Well, I know right
But-
during the Depression, the worst of the Depression, that was all I was making. I was
But-
weaving at that time. Let's see, no, I guess I'd started fixing, I'm not sure.
Living circumstances were different then. You could,
You know,
a nickel would go a long way.
you could get a dozen eggs for a nickel.
Get a candy bar for a nickel.
Do you that what you were doing was part of a very big national effort?
We knew that was what way we wanted things to go, but we didn't realize we were doing much. You?
Well, no, I just didn't know how far we was going to get because the future was dark. It's real dark.
Well, when Roosevelt went in, he also started, besides starting NRA, he started the CCC camps, and that put a lot of the young boys to work.
And some of the men too.
Yeah, and then he had another program. What was it? WPA?
Might
Worked
have
on
been.
the roads.
Yeah, that's it.
But what I'm wondering about is, did you realize that your local 1994 right here was part of something much bigger?
Yes, we hope to succeed and help the whole organization, but we didn't get as far as we'd hoped.
I mean, it didn't come to us as much here, but
That's what I mean.
the Union as a whole, we knew the North was making pretty good and all that business, but we knew their wages were better than ours. And
But when you went out on that, you remember those rallies?
a little bit, yeah. Honey, I remember them and boys more than I do the rallies. I was a teenager.
Did you ever see Lloyd talk? Did you ever see him in front of
Yeah,
the union
I
meeting?
saw him, let's see, once over at the Union Hall.
I didn't know
Then-
that.
I did. Wake up, bud. And let's see. I know you went to some of the other rallies off from here.
Yes,
Now, I don't
I-
know where you went to. And give
Well-
pep talks.
Well, I went to Union for one in Rock Hill, and another town over in that. Where does the power come from here?
Lockhart?
Lockhart, yeah. Through that area there.
Well, I didn't know where you went to, but I knew you went.
That was 4 places I can think of. There might have been more.
Well, those are sort of local places, pretty close around.
So the towns were learning, were working together.
Yeah,
You
just,
would go and meet one local and another local.
that's
yeah.
right.
Could you tell me that?
Yes,
You remember Polycarp, or I can see
yes, I remember.
he and let's see, there was another one I remembered.
Lloyd, could you tell me that?
Now, what was?
How that you would take 1994 people from here and you would go to other places to talk it up.
Yes,
Could you?
me and two more men went to Union to a meeting, and then we went to Lockhart, then Rock Hill, and then the last meeting of the day is a town over near Rock Hill. I don't remember the name of it. We went to the first one in the morning. We spent a whole day. And I didn't make many trips like that.
Well, most of them that talked, to me it sounded like pep rallies, just trying to buoy up the people's feelings and making them wish to join and be part of the union.
And getting everybody to have the same hopes, so there won't be any division in the group.
Well, thank
That
you.
was among people who weren't trained and weren't, they were doing it on their own without being trained, you know. They weren't given advice and they just went on their own. And it was like talking to a buddy.
Well, I expect we'd better start going because
You getting
the
tired?
clouds are getting bigger.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, you guys just walk on back and I'll just shoot you from